Shalom, shalom, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Pulse of Israel. Again, not in my ancestral homeland. We're in the Judean hills, but here in Phoenix, Arizona. And I'm speaking with, I believe, one of the most important journalists today, and definitely a extremely brave journalist, that if you have not heard about him yet, or if you're not reading or seeing him, you should. And this is Joshua Phillips of the Epoch Times. Now, I was introduced to Josh in the beginning of COVID. All the way in the beginning, he made a documentary about China's connection with the whole COVID fiasco that I put up on my website in the very beginning. It was all the way back in March 2020.
It was probably a couple months after the outbreak happened. We moved really quick on that thing.
Yeah, they were one of the quickest, and we put it up and got it out there to our audience. It went really viral. And he, very, very rational, well thought out, well researched on all the issues he talks about. So look out for him. So first of all, Josh, how did you get to the Epoch Times and be doing what you're doing today? Because believe it or not, I did not hear of the Epoch Times until I saw that video, and then I started reading up on it.
I've been with Epoch Times since 2006. I'm one of the technically older reporters there. And I began my investigative journalism career in 2008 when I had a summer internship with Epoch Times in New York, and I accidentally uncovered one of the Chinese Communist Party's largest spy operations in the United States, which is the United Front Work Department. And that turned into a multi-year-long investigation, which I felt kind of a moral obligation to keep up with because nobody else was talking about it at the time, and I was concerned that if I didn't expose it, nobody was going to do it.
And again, not enough Americans or not enough freedom-loving people understand the octopus impact that the CCP has on all of our lives. All of our lives, every single day. Am I exaggerating?
It's fully accurate.
Right? Whether media, whether corporations, whether business, whether politicians, at all levels of office, all levels of C-level suites of major corporations of America internationally. And this isn't just a concern for America, but I know well enough in Israel. China is deep in Israel. Yeah. Unfortunately, the Israeli government gave permission for China to whether own or lease our ports, build some of the roads, build train infrastructure. And as I was talking to some anti-communist Chinese here, they were telling me exactly, you know what the Chinese are doing with all those projects. I'm like, what? I'm like, they're gathering intelligence on you, and they're giving that intelligence to your enemies. Yep. And it's like not enough people, and I'm coming from Israel, not enough Israelis, not enough Jews, understand the real-life implications of working together with the CCP.
Yeah. So well, I get as Israel, they're like, we'll get friends where we can get them. You know, I understand.
Josh understands the geopolitical challenges of being a tiny country smaller than the state of New Jersey,
surrounded by people who want to kill you.
Right.
But I get it. But of course, you know, the Chinese Communist Party, for them, war doesn't just look like troops and guns and bombs. War looks like creating puppet states and controlling the civil society. They understand that if you control the means of production, if you control the factories, if you control the elements that generate, you know, the basis of the economy, if you control the academics, the businesses, even the politicians, you control the country. And they have active programs to do all of that.
Right. And again, if you think your state or city is exempt, I suggest you follow people who are following the corruption of the CCP in its octopus approach in the United States. There are politicians who are connected with the CCP on all levels of American government. Governors, senators, congressmen, local politicians. So it's scary stuff, but you want to know reality of what's going on around us and be prepared and be optimistic about working towards the future. Follow Josh and all the important work the Epoch Times is doing on this, and you see the detailed level that they understand in research. So now I want to talk to you about the Middle East.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're also very knowledgeable about that. I mean, here I'm coming from the front lines of the war. My son right now is literally fighting in Gaza on positions in the mountains of Judea and Samaria. You understand that the enemy the Jewish people are up against in our Jewish state of Israel is not just an enemy that's out to destroy Israel and the Jewish people. It's really out to destroy the whole freedom-loving world. Do you want to give more insight into that understanding from your perspective?
So, a lot of modern radical Islam is rooted in communism. and
Wow.
this needs to be understood. The Palestinian Liberation Organization, of course, was, with the Yasser Arafat. They were a front organization of both the Chinese Communist Party and of the Soviet Union. He had training with the Chinese Communists and with the Soviets. The method of terrorism was a Bolshevik method. The Communists have always been terrorists, going back to the bombing of Wall Street, late 1800 terrorist attacks with the anarchist movements in the United States. Terrorism has always been one of the main tools of communism. In fact, going back to the reign of terror with the French Revolution, with of course the Jacobins and so on, right? And so when you get into what's happening now, what the Soviet Union did, there was a great book by Ion Mihai Pacepa. He was one of the highest-ranking defectors from the Soviet bloc. He was under Ceausescu in Romania. Ion Mihai Pacepa was I believe he was a 4-star general. He was tasked with helping with a lot of the subversion the Soviets and, of course, Ceausescu and Romania were doing in different countries. One of the things they did was they spread the protocols of the Elders of Zion to the entire Muslim world. And the idea was that, first of all, they were punishing Israel for siding with America because, Israel, of course, was a socialist country, and they believed it was going to be part of the Soviet bloc, basically. Right. When Israel didn't agree to that, they punished Israel. And they decided to paint Zionism as an American issue. American Zionism. That was one of the big narratives they were pushing. And so in order to demonize America and to go against the entire, Western front of, capitalism and so on, they grouped in Israel with all of that. And of course, using the protocols of the Elders of Zion is one of their main tools for that. And then they started using this to radicalize different communist organizations. A lot of the revolutions you saw sweep across the Muslim world was a breakaway movement alongside the communist revolutions in Europe and elsewhere. A lot of this goes to Sayyid al-Qutb, who was with the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood, and he was a socialist. And what he did was he rewrote the Quran. Essentially, he reinterpreted the Quran, and especially
When is this?
This was in the early 1900s, around the same time as the Bolshevik Revolution.
Okay.
They call Sayyid al-Qutb the Muslim equivalent of Karl Marx. He's recognized as this. And what he did was he reinterpreted Islam through the lens of communist revolution. And so he reinterpreted the idea of jihad as being an external revolution rather than like a spiritual revolution. And a lot of the Muslim scholars seriously disagreed with him. At the time, in a lot of the Muslim world, including in Egypt, you had a liberalization taking place. You could argue, of course, historically Islam always had a lot of these problems, but there was a liberalization taking place. And of course, Sayyid al-Qutb and the other radicals within the Muslim Brotherhood used that to say, Muslims have lost their way. And he started a very radical, very extreme form of Islam that embedded itself within the government structures, basically being a form of socialism masquerading as Islamic regimes. That created a conflict in the Muslim world, where you had the Iranian Revolution, you had of course the revolutions and the attempted revolutions in some in Lebanon, and for example, right, and other Muslim countries that adopted the Muslim Brotherhoods, what they called the Egyptian model of Islam. In Saudi Arabia, they had the attempted revolution, which was the Princes Rebellion, and they had the Red Prince, the father of Alawid bin Talal, for example. Right, they call him the Red Prince, who was the head of that, and there was a whole attempted military coup and so on. It was a very delicate time. That was the battle between liberal Islam and what they called the Egyptian model of Islam. And the Egyptian model of Islam was the Soviet one, or the socialist one. They, of course, joined the Soviet alliance. And if you're wondering why, for example, China can, imprison, torture, and murder Muslims, the Muslim Uyghurs, and none of these countries seem to have an issue with it, but, Israel fights against the Palestinian terrorists and, with Hamas, and everybody has a problem. But, why is it that Israel can counterattack against a terrorist attack? And they're the devil of the Muslim world, but the Chinese Communist Party can harvest the organs and literally enslave, openly so, Muslim Uyghurs, and none of them have an issue with it. Well, that's your reason. It's because it's political. It's not religious.
Wow. So what would be your message today to the people of Israel, to the Jewish people of Israel, with your understanding that I believe most, if not a majority, of Jews, and definitely Israeli Jews, do not have this level of understanding. And I'm even being educated by this right now. I didn't even know this. So what would your message be to the Jewish people today on Israel?
You're not just fighting against Hamas. You're fighting against the Chinese Communist Party and the bloc of socialist nations connected to it. You know, socialist nations led by a communistic worldview, right? It's like a religion. Just talking about Hamas. Let's talk about Hamas. The Chinese Communist Party met with the Palestinian Authority right before the attack happened. The Chinese Communist Party wants to have a trade route going through Palestine. They have interest in working with the Palestinian Authority to make that happen, because nobody can work with Hamas because they're crazy. They know that the Palestinian Authority, if they get it back into the United Nations, they can have diplomacy with it. They know they can become world leaders on the Muslim front and so on. They can become a global voice, and that basically they can subdue Israel by using them as a proxy because they can negotiate the peace deals.
Wait, so this is unbelievable. You're basically saying, so, and correct me if I'm wrong. On the one hand, again, I don't have the proof to say this, but I imagine there is funding from China that is going to Hamas, whether through Iran, whether directly, who knows, right? So on the one hand,
Hamas gets funding from a lot of people.
Exactly. So, but on the one hand, you'll hear what I'm saying. This on the one hand, China is funding Hamas, but it's funding Hamas basically in order to allow Israel to defeat it, so that then essentially they believe the Palestinian Authority would replace Hamas to then be able to do all the bad stuff they want to do via partnering with the Palestinian Authority.
In my opinion, yes, and it's because the Palestinian Authority is the successor of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, which was a front group of the Chinese Communist Party and the Soviet Union. They built it. And not only that, but guess what? The method of using the paratroopers, that was a North Korean strategy announced back in 2017, and the reason the North Koreans did that was because the North Koreans said that method it doesn't trigger the air control systems, which is why they did the air defense systems. They can circumvent the radar and so on by using that method. You can look up do a Google search. North Korean attack strategy paratroopers, and you'll find the articles from 2017 on that. Also, the weapons dealers, the two main weapons dealers working in Iran are North Korean. A lot of North Korean arms, of course, going to them, going to Russia. Also, North Korea, from what I've heard, also works with Hamas in terms of tunnel building. They discovered very similar tunnels going from North Korea into South Korea for very similar attacks. And when you talk about the nature of North Korea being a puppet state of the Chinese Communist Party, working with Iran is a proxy to use the international terrorism. Even in Latin America, where you have like Hezbollah tied in with Iran that has entire political parties. There's a triad of evil between Russia, Iran, and China, working through these little puppet states where they use these types of movements to serve their political interests. And so Hamas should be interpreted within the broader context of that ecosystem.
I could be sitting and talking to this man for hours. Unbelievable. And there's so much information that I myself I'm learning as well. Josh, thank you so much for your important voice, again, on all of this. And again, everyone should understand it's all interconnected. All of the challenges we're up against, these geopolitical challenges, it's not just America, it's not just Israel, it's all of us. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Appreciate it. All right, I look forward to sitting down and talking with you again.
Thank you.
Everyone, signing off for another episode of the Pulse of Israel here in not in our eternal and ancestral homeland, but from Phoenix. If you are not yet a subscriber to Pulse of Israel, go to pulseofisrael.com and click to subscribe. If you are not yet a donor to allow us to have these videos be seen by many more people, just click on the donate button on pulseofisrael.com. Shalom, everyone. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Pulse of Israel, frontline videos from the Holy Land. Support our work by donating today.